Okay, Boker Tov. Good morning, everyone. So we're starting in Likutei Moharan, Tinyana, Siman Beis. Now we're joining groups around the world. We're learning the same piece in Likutei Moharan everywhere. There's chaburas all across the U.S., Eretz Yisrael, and everywhere else around the world joining together. So Yemei Chanukah hem Yemei Hodah. So the days of Chanukah are days of Hodah, of praise, of thanks. K'moshe Kasov, as it says, right? What do we say about Chanukah? What is the purpose of Chanukah? We establish the days of Chanukah lahodos ulahalal, to give thanksgiving and praise, to give thanks to Hashem and to praise Hashem. That's the whole purpose of Chanukah. Now we say, what does it mean to give thanks, to give praise of God? This is sha'ashua olam haba. What does sha'ashua mean? We say, lulei toirascha sha'ashuai. What does sha'ashua mean? It is the delight. This is what I'm living for. This is my chiyus. This is what I care about. This is what I love. Ze bechina sha'ashua olam haba. So what are we going to be doing in olam haba? We're going to be praising God. In the world to come, what's going to be our hobby? What's going to be what we spend our time with? Praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's at Iker Sha'ashua Olam Haba. L'hoidois u'lahalal l'shmai hagadol yisparach. To give praise and thanks to Hashem. U'lahakir Isai. And to know Him. And to get to know Hashem. What does it mean to know God through consciousness? Yisparach. Sha'ayidei zeh semuchem u'kruvim alav yisparach. Because through this, through giving thanks and praise, we bring our closeness to Hashem to consciousness. What does it mean, smuchim ukrovim? A Jew is always close to God. A person is always close to the Hebishter, right? What does it mean close? Are you close to yourself? You have a nefesh halikis. You have a part of God inside of you. You have a piece of HaKadosh Baruch Hu inside of you. So what does it mean, smuchim ukrovim alav? You're close to Him. You're samuch. You're next to. We're talking not here on a spiritual reality, but rather we're talking about bringing it to the world of consciousness. Because the reality is that a Jew is always davuk to Hashem. We don't always remember that we're davuk to Hashem. We don't always remember davuk from the word devek. You're glued. You're mamish glued to Hashem. Why? Because of who we are. What are we? You're a piece of Hashem. If you're a piece of Hashem, you're a nefesh halikis that happens to live inside a packaging called a body. But what you are is a nefesh halikis. Smuchim ukruvim alav b'vadai. Of course you're connected to the Eibishter. However, what's the question? Do we remember that? So the more we praise and thank God, the more we awaken into our consciousness how we are close to Him. Because the more that we get to know Hashem, it's a fascinating lashon that Rav Nachman uses. The more we get to know each other, the more we develop love and closeness. In general, this is true in physical relationships, in human relationships too. You get to know somebody. Now, if you get to know somebody, and this is somebody, let's say, worth knowing, right? The more you get to know each other, the deeper and deeper you find your relationship to get, right? Some people, you meet them, and the more you get to know each other, it's harder to connect. Some people, the more you get to know them, the more you realize, wow, gevalt, there's so much there. So all the more so, kal v'chomer, when it comes to getting to know Hashem. The more we spend time learning Torah, doing mitzvahs, and specifically thanking and praising God, what happens? The closer we get to Him in the world of consciousness. Okay, so now we're going to get into the next bit here, talking about karbanos, and specifically the karban toda. Karban toda is a karban of thanksgiving, of giving thanks and praise to Hashem. In the future, in the times to come, times of Mashiach, brought in the Medrash Rabbah, in the times of Mashiach, we're not going to have any karbanos other than the carbon of thanksgiving. We're not going to have a carbon of any of the karbanos that one brings when they do something wrong. Because we're going to be in such a place where a person is so connected to God that we're living in a way that's consistent with Ratzon Hashem. And therefore, we won't need to bring karbanos that are for atonement offerings, like a chatas. So we're only going to bring thanksgiving offerings. To know Hashem and to thank Hashem. This is an idea of saying which karbonos may actually last long term. There might be an idea that a chatas we do bring. Why would we bring a chatas if we're not making if we're not doing something wrong, a sin, right? We're going to have the shlamim, the tamid, and the musaf, according to some opinions. But part of the musaf was the chatos. The chatos you bring when you do something wrong. So why would we have a carbon chatos? It says because chatos isn't just to do something wrong. Chet also means a lack, that I want more. That even in the times of Mashiach, when a Jew is living in a way, when people of the world are living in a way that is consistent with Ratzon Hashem, at the same time, there is still going to be, I want more. And what happens? The more closeness you get to Hashem, the more you realize, I want more. Someone says, I know everything. It's an Esav energy. What was Esav? I know everything. I'm already full. What's a Yaakov energy? Ekev. I'm just beginning. I'm just getting started. So with just getting started, there's still a place to bring a chatos. Because chatos doesn't mean atoning specifically for something wrong. It means there is a lack in where I want to be, in the hasagus I want to have, in the connection I want to have. Okay, so in the days to come, there's going to be just Toda and Hoda'ah. Kemoshe Kasuv, Himalei haaretz deya es Hashem. The whole world is going to be filled with a knowledge of God. Kemayim liyam mechasim. Just like the water covers the bed of the sea. Meaning the world is going to be covered in an energy and an ability of das, of knowledge, of deep desire to draw close to God. Shezeh kol sha'ashua olam haba. This is what we're going to do in Olam Haba. We can understand from this a teaching that is said b'shem the Baal Shem Tov, that in Olam Haba, it's really, and another place are really one of the same. What does it mean it's really one of the same? It's a place to give thanks and delight in God's presence. To a person who spent their life working that muscle of delight and praise to God, that is Shashua Olam Haba. To a person who worked to be spiritually insensitive during their life and has numbed themselves and numbed the part of themselves that is kulo davuk, surrounded it with klipa, to them, the Shashua Olam Haba feels foreign. Ubechinas Toda shehu Shashua Olam Haba. So when we say that the Toda is the delight of the world to come, Zeh bechinas halachos. So now we're getting into, Nachman oftentimes says, connects the dots on things that we wouldn't necessarily have thought of as connected. He said, this is halacha. I would have told you off the bat. What does it mean to give praise and thanks? That has to do with halacha. We're going to say, what does that have to do with halacha? Right? Ki halacha shezaichem lilmod. Because when we learn halacha, when we learn, what is halacha? Practical way to live our life with the Ratzon Hashem. In a practical way. Specifically, someone who is able to learn halacha in a way that there's a chiddush. To understand, number one, to be mechadish a halacha. To apply knowledge into your life. That's chiddush. Meaning you're looking at it with a fresh eyes. To make a chiddush doesn't just mean something that was never written in a book before. It's not what a chiddush means. Chiddush also means that I revealed something that hasn't been written in any book anywhere. But a chiddush deeper than that, I think a chiddush means I revealed a new way to look at something. A way that was particular to who I am. To take the Torah and to apply it into my life in a way that is individualistic. In a way that speaks particularly to me. As the Gemara in Nida says, someone who learns halacha every day, Muftach lo shu ben olam haba. This is why we try to learn halacha every day, right? It says Muftach lo shu ben olam haba. It's promised to him he's a ben olam haba. Why is it a promise to him that he's a ben olam haba just because he learns halacha every day? Because when you bring halacha into your life in a way, when we say a chiddush again, when we learn a halacha and we bring it into our life in a way that is a chiddush, because each and every one of us are a chiddush, you awaken the ability of seichel, of intellectual knowledge, and yediyah, and knowledge which connects. So halacha is das. Halacha is das, meaning halacha is knowing. Knowing in a way of connection, of how do I live my life? How do I live my life as a connected Jew in Torah mitzvahs? And that's connected to Toda, of thanks. So we're going to see exactly what does this have to do with Toda. We said Olam Haba is praise and thanks to God, and Das. And we'll explain this a little bit deeper. V'zeh bechinas v'adas hu ikar shashua olam haba. V'zeh bechinas arba tzrichim lahaydos. So if we look at the halachos of Birkas HaGomel, when a person travels somewhere and they have to say the blessing of HaGomel Chayavim Tovo Shegamlani Kol Tov, that Hashem has protected you in some way when you've been in a situation that has been dangerous. So when do we say Birkas HaGomel? What are the reasons? Say someone who's in the wilderness, someone who's a captive, and all the captives should be brought home safely, should be free. Someone who is ill, seriously ill, and someone who travels me'ever layam, someone who travels over the water, goes on a boat. When they get back, they have to say a Birkas HaGomel. So arba tzrichim lahaida is the hainu toda. They have to do a toda. Shem befurashim b'mizmar kuf zayin. The Baal Shem Tov says that we should say mizmar kuf zayin when? On Erev Shabbos, on the mincha before Shabbos. We should say mizmar kuf zayin. Zeb shesiyam besofa mi chacham v'yishamer ela v'yispaininu chaste Hashem. Which means what? Whoever is wise will take note of these things, and they will comprehend the kindness of Hashem. So what's going on here? When a person goes into a situation that could be dangerous, then they come back and they give thanks to God for protecting. Chaste Hashem ze bechinas halachas. What is a chaste Hashem is halachas? Why is the kindness of God a halacha? Kmo sha'amru rabbeinu zecharim levracha kol ha'manei talmido milashamsho kilu manei mimenu chesed shene'amar lamas mereu chesed. That someone who doesn't allow one student to help him, it's like he's removing chesed. What is a chesed? To be able to be helped in this world, to have a compass in a world that is confusing, in a world that is all over the place, and to have halacha. Halacha is the greatest gift that we have. People mistakenly look at halacha as a burden. People think halacha is a burden. It's hard to keep halacha. It is sometimes hard. But halacha is the greatest gift. Why is halacha the greatest gift? Because it gives us a place of awareness to fill the world with awareness of God. Without awareness, we can't have thanks. How can we give thanks to God and praise to God if we don't have awareness of God? So halacha gives us awareness, which is das. Halacha is das, which then brings us to a place to have toda. Now, Rav Nachman explains a little bit further to say that when we talk about Birkas HaGomel, we're not just talking about a situation physically of these four items, but also spiritually. We said it was wilderness. A neshama coming into the world is reminiscent of these four topics. A neshama comes into the world, they're thrown into wilderness. Meaning, a soul which is kulo davuk to Hashem openly is then thrown into a world of tzimtzum, of contraction, of smallness, of confusion. It's wilderness. What is going on? What are all these strange things? Captives, we get stuck. Spiritually, we get stuck. Seriously ill. When a person is ill, they feel unable to get up, right? Even in halacha, one who is ill is usually defined as someone who is stuck in bed. They can't get up, they can't do their normal functioning. A neshama is put into the world, and to some extent it becomes sick. That we can't just get up. We feel a difficulty in just getting up and doing. And me'ever layam, we're rocking back and forth. We're not connected to ground. We don't feel connected to the root of our life. We're just flying all over the place. So Baal Shem Tov says, going through the week is reminiscent to, is bechinas, the days of the week is bechinas, the world, pre-Olam Haba, Shabbos, Yom Shekulo Shabbos. Shabbos is like Olam Haba. Shabbos is like the times of Mashiach. Shabbos is like pre-Chet Adam HaRishon, the place in which there is no contraction, the place in which everything is open and visible, and the world is filled with das. So, the Baal Shem Tov says we should say this. Because why? Mi chacham yishamer ela. Who is a chacham? V'yispaininu chaste Hashem. To be mispainin, to meditate on the kindness of God. Baal Shem Tov says we should say this every Erev Shabbos. Because that's our journey, is these four things. Our journey in life is like these four things. Where we're traveling, we're up, we're down, we're sideways, we don't know what's what. But when we say, what is the chaste Hashem? Mi chacham. Who is considered a chacham? Is someone who sees the chesed Hashem. Who is the chacham? What was the chesed Hashem we said? Halacha. What was the chesed? It was halacha. Our compass. Das. So mi chacham, who is wise? Someone who sees the chesed of Hashem. How do I see the chesed of Hashem? I see that God gave me a compass. I see that God told me what's up, what's down, what's sideways, what's left, what's right. showed me where to go. He gave me an ability to live my life in a holy and pure way, which is halacha. And therefore we give thanks. Shehem bechinas chaste David. Now what does it mean when it says chaste David? Pasuk in Yeshaya refers to Torah laws as chaste David, the kindness of David. Why David? Shahalacha kamoso. So we say that the halacha is always like David. Whenever David HaMelech had an argument with someone in halacha, who did we go by? David. He was always right. Whenever David said his opinion in halacha, in understanding a concept in the Torah for what is proper, what is improper, who did we go like? We always went like David. And that's what it means, chaste David, the kindness of David. The halacha, which was the kindness of David. Kamosha Amur Rabbeinu Zechronim Levracha, like the Gemara in Sanhedrin says, V'Hashem imo. What does it mean that God is with him? Shahalacha kamoisai, that the halacha was like him. What does it mean that we paskin like him? We paskin like David HaMelech, because when he was paskining halacha, he wasn't just looking at it as a law book. He was living with a relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. To him, understanding halacha meant to understand the Ratzon Hashem. The Baal Tanya talks about this. And Tanya talks about when you learn something in Torah, your brain is getting wrapped up in the Ratzon of Hashem, the will of God. Because him and his will are one. So because David HaMelech was learning Torah from a place of divine inspiration, not just chas v'shalom to make yourself just seem smart or intelligent or one up the next guy, right? One of my least favorite words is when someone upschlugs someone, one up someone. It's one of my least favorite words when we're talking and learning. You miss the whole point. You're trying to upschlug, you miss the whole point. David HaMelech got the point. What was the point? V'Hashem imoi. If you're learning Torah and you're not learning it from a place of V'Hashem imoi, it's not chaste David. You've missed it. You've missed the boat. It's as if you're learning a chemistry book. You're upschlugging chevra. You missed the whole boat. A bam kasha. You missed the whole boat. You missed the whole point. That's not written from a place of Hashem imoi. For it to be from a place of Hashem imoi, you're trying to reveal Ratzon Hashem, not have good questions. Hainu shesamuch v'karuv l'Hashem yisparach. You're close to the Eibishter. B'chinas sha'ashua olam haba shu b'chinas halachas. There's a story with, I believe the story was with Rav Leibel Eger. When Rav Leibel Eger was becoming connected to the world of Chassidus. I don't remember which Rebbe it was by initially. If anybody knows, they could please let me know afterwards. But Rav Leibel was there, and I believe it was a fast day. It was a lot of facts are missing from the story. Please inform me later if you know the story. But the idea was a teaching of a Hashem Imoy. That Rav Leibel was there, and they start, I think maybe it was Tisha B'Av, they start bringing out a whole Suda. It's Tisha B'Av, and Rav Leibel is very concerned. This is what the Chassidim do. This is what the Chevra do. Nobody's eating. They're just setting the table. Bringing out all this food. So he says, what do you mean it's a Tisha B'Av? It's Asr. You can't eat. And everyone's just ignoring him. They're just setting up the table. And then it keeps going. It's Asr. Don't you know what it says? It says here in the Shulchan Aruch. It says here in the Rambam. It says here in the Gemara. He starts quoting Maharan Mekaymis left, right, and center. Tons of Maharan Mekaymis. Why you can't eat on Tisha B'Av. And everybody's ignoring him. And then finally he says, the Eibush is zokt. 9. Hashem says no. Hashem doesn't want you to. Hashem does not want you to eat right now. What do? They put away all the food, put it back in the kitchen. They said, now you understood. Now you understand what it means to learn halacha as a chassid. To learn halacha as a chassid means, B'Hashem imoy. You're not just thinking, what does it say in the book? What does it say here? You are thinking that, and you have to learn things about smada. But what we're really saying is, what does Hashem want from me? When you open up a Shulchan Aruch, what's the true chesed of a Shulchan Aruch? You open up a Shulchan Aruch and you say, what does Hashem want from me? And I'm going to open up a Shulchan Aruch to understand what the Eibusher wants from me. Gevalik. That's what it means that the Torah, that halacha is chasadim. And therefore, giving thanks is halacha. Because you bring a toda. When do you bring a carbon toda? Thanks to God. When you get out of a tzara. When you get out of something difficult. Because when a person falls into something difficult, as a ikar hatzara balev, the main part of the tzara is not the actual. Nachman's way ahead of his time here. Saying the main part of the tzara is not the actual difficulty that you went through, but it's the emotional impact that it had on you. Meaning what? Because the heart mamish feels what you're going through. A person, we'll give one of the examples. A person is me'ever layam. He's going on a boat. That was one of the ideas. He's going on a boat and he's being pushed back, forth, and it's a scary storm. Tachlis, at the end of it, nothing really happened to him physically. Right? He survived, and he brings a carbon taida. Nothing really happened. Maybe got a little wet from the storm, some rain. Maybe got a little nauseous. Okay. But what happened? The ikar was, as the ikar atzara belev. It's an amazing awareness that Rav Nachman is teaching us here. The ikar tzara was in an emotional sense. K'moshe kasav, leiv yoidei maras nafshay. A leiv knows the pain, the bitterness of the soul. He a leiv maven. Because we understand the leiv to be the seat of our emotional abilities. And you feel the tzara in your heart. And therefore, at the time when someone is going through something difficult, all the blood flows to the heart. Someone gets nervous, what happens? Someone's going through something, what happens? Heart starts pumping, right? Starts beating faster. Just like in a physical place, if there's something difficult happening, there's some issue happening somewhere, everybody gathers together to go to the wise person of that town to ask them, what should we do? What's going on, right? There's a storm coming, so everybody gets together and they ask the wise person. Right? This is a time before you could, I guess, just ask ChatGPT what to do. But you had to go and you went to the Chacham and you gathered together to the Chacham. L'kabel mimenu eitza, to get an eitza from him. So too, all the damim get together, all the blood in your body gets together and gathers to the heart. Levakesh eitza v'tachbula keneged atzara, to gather advice v'tachbula keneged atzara. What should I do? Plans against the tzara. V'azehem shoitfim el alev, and then it floods the heart. V'az halev b'tzara b'doichet gadol. So what happens to the heart? The heart is beating fast. Kilo dai shalev doyeg biatzmo, because it's not enough that the heart is worried about itself. You margish atzara yoiser mikulam, but everything else is flooding into the heart. But even the blood is coming together. So what's going on in your body when you go through something stressful? All the blood is pumping through your heart. So he says the heart is like the chacham. Just like everybody would come to the wise man and say to the wise man, what should we do? So all the blood is coming to the heart. What should we do? And it's pumping. The heart starts pounding. When it's pounding, try to send the blood away from it. There's too much going on over here. Get away from me. That's the heart is saying. That's why someone is going through something difficult, their heart is pounding. And then when you leave the tzara, when everything calms down, then the blood goes on a ta'alucha, goes back to where it's supposed to go. Calmly, it leaves the heart and it goes to where it's supposed to go. So too a carbon taida. The carbon toda is brought when we get out of a tzara, like the blood leaving the heart to go pumped calmly to the rest of the body. So do we bring a carbon toda at that point? Hi mechuna b'shem halacha. It's called halacha, right? We've been saying what? That toda and halacha are one of the same. Al shem ta'aluchis hadamim, because of the idea of the ta'alucha of the blood, the moving of the blood. Shahochem k'seider k'shiyotzim ha'tzara. Halacha is ta'alucha. What is ta'alucha? Halacha means a path, a way. Ta'alucha means to walk, to journey, a journey, a process. So now we're saying, and this is how giving birth is made easy. And we're talking about giving birth. We're talking physically about giving birth, of a woman giving birth to a child, but we're also talking about the birth of an idea, the birth of a concept, the birth of a movement. Giving birth means you're bringing something new into the world. Something new is being brought. as brought in the Gemara in Sota, that when a woman is giving birth, it says, Yar Choseya mitzdananois, her thighs become cold. Now what does that mean? The blood is leaving from those areas of her body and going to the heart. The blood rises up to the upper part of her body. And then when the blood is being pushed from the heart, that leads to the baby being pushed out. And then the blood goes back to where it's supposed to go. And this is the idea of Toda and Halacha. The movement of the blood, which goes then afterwards to flow normally. Now, what does this mean that a halacha has to do with birth? What does it mean to birth an idea, to give birth to something? To give birth to something means to bring something into the world, a new ability. Every person is a totally new bria, totally new creation that has a total chiddush in the way of comprehending and connecting to Eskalus Elikus, to the revelation of Hashem. Every person, the way that Ani Yadati Ki Gadol Hashem, first piece in Zichas Haran, every person, Ati Yadati Ki Gadol Hashem, every person is a total chiddush in the way that they can connect to and reveal God's glory in the world. So what happens? So the blood goes from the lower part of a person's body up to the higher parts, and then it pushes. And that gives birth to a concept, to an idea. Ki gam halacha hi bechinas haylada. Because a halacha is like a birth. Ki yesh tamchei araisa. Shenoisnim mamon leloim de Torah. Ubetchila hem mechasrim amayim atzma. So now we're going into something. Before we go into this, just one more idea of this is that birthing an idea. To birth an idea means to bring forth something. Hischadshus. And that's, so far we've said Toda, thanks, and Halacha, a path. To be Mechadesh, a new path, is to give birth to something. To be Mechadesh a Halacha is to give birth to a Halacha. So it says when somebody then gives money, let's say, to someone who is studying Torah, someone gives money. If I give $1,000, I now have $1,000 less in my pocket. But do I? It's, you're taking it away from yourself. It's lacking by me now because I gave it to someone else. This is the idea of when we said, the Gemara said that her thighs, her legs became the blood cold because the blood went away from it. That's like my pockets became lighter when I gave money to someone. Damim means two things. Damim means blood, but damim also means money. Damim also means money. But afterwards, when you give money, through money that you give to a Talmid Chacham, or money that you give for any good purpose of something that you see in the world that needs to happen. You see in the world something needs to happen, so you give money to it. You help support it. And when you support a Talmid Chacham, and then they give forth halachos, meaning give forth a path in connecting to Hashem. Shem bechinas chesed, which is chesed. The chisaron gets filled. I mean, just like we said, the blood goes away and then comes back. So too the money comes away, but then comes back. This is what it means when we say Shashua Olam Haba, Bechinas Faya, or Halavanak, or Chama. Now we get into a gavaldic idea about the moon and the sun. We have to keep a chart. So when we're learning Likutei Maharan, it's like, this is Bechinas, this and this. We have to keep a chart of what we're saying. But we said this is the or Halavanak, or Chama. What's the difference between the moon and the sun? The moon reflects light. The moon doesn't have its own light. So there was an argument in the beginning of creation where the sun and the moon got into a fight. They were both They were both big. They both had their own light. And the moon said, how could two kings wear the same crown? How could me and the sun over here have the same tafkid in life? It's a big question. I'm not you, you're not me. We each have our own tafkid. We each have something else to do. So the moon asks God, how could it be that me and you have the same role? Doesn't make sense. So what did Hashem do? He made the moon smaller. You're right, you're going to be a reflector. The sun's going to be the big bright light, you're going to reflect that light. Seems like the moon got punished. The Gemara talks about that the moon was punished for asking such a question. But if you look at it, didn't the moon have a great question? How could we both be the same person? How could we both be the same thing? It doesn't make sense. Hashem, you created everything with chachma. So you're going to create a moon and a sun that are the same? Doesn't add up. The moon was much smarter than the sun. So what does this mean? Rav Shlomo explains this in a deeper way. He says the moon was actually told, you said good. To be a moon person means to say, you're becoming full, you're becoming small, you're always changing, you're always evolving. You're not just the same. There's something very fake about the sun burning bright the same way every day. Something very fake about that. It's almost artificial. It's not artificial. It's something almost artificial about it. Does that look like a person? Is a person the same every day? Nachman talks a lot. It's chaj. We're very connected to the moon. Why are we so connected to the moon? Because the moon is always recreating. And that's why it says, "En emer la'asid ki alavana tivakar." The moon is cold. The damim have left it, so to speak. The moon is cold. B'chinas chisaron ukrirus, in a way of being lacking and cold. V'asida l'smalois ko'or hachamo. And in the future, in the times to come, it's going to be filled like the sun. B'chinas miloy chisaron, filling up its lack. Zeh b'chinas haylada, which is like giving birth. B'chinas halachas, which is like halacha and walking in the path of God. Zeh b'chinas shashua olam haba. So you say in the time to come, the moon is going to be the big one. Because the moon is the real one. The moon represents realness and intimacy. That's what the moon represents. These are the offspring of the heaven and the earth. You change around when they were created. The same letters spell Avraham. What was Avraham? Avram's midah was chesed. Avram was Mr. Chesed, right? Avram's whole midah was kindness. Because birth is chesed. Giving birth is chesed. You're quite literally doing the most chesed avodah that could be done by bringing a child into the world or by bringing anything into the world. That's an act of chesed. An act of chesed is you're creating something new. This is what we say in Tehillim, Mizmor l'Soida, Hariyu Hashem kol haaretz. That we say Mizmor l'Soida, Hariyu Hashem kol haaretz, a psalm of Todah. Hariyu Hashem kol haaretz, to sound a note across the whole world. L'Soida, Oisios Toilada. Todah, thanks, is Tolada. What is Tolada? Birth. Hariyu Hashem kol haaretz, Reishi Tevos Halacha. Look at these words, it says Halacha. It's Gevaldik. The Reishi Tevos of Hariyu Hashem kol haaretz is Halacha. More ki halachas b'chinas Todah, because Halacha is Chesed, which is thanks, and b'chinas Haylada, which is the birth. And we're on the last bit of this first shir. And this is why we taught Zichronim Levracha and Sota Daf Yud. Asa Chala Esraglov. So Asa, one of the kings, one of the Jewish kings, Chala Esraglov, his feet were damaged. Asa Angaria B'Talmidei Chachamim, because he fought many battles, and overall he was a very holy and very great king. But one thing he did was he forced everyone, even people that the Torah tells us should not be serving in the army, meaning it says someone who was just newly married, or someone who was, right, we have the psukim that tell us someone who just built a house and didn't settle it, someone who planted a vineyard, someone who just got married. So we say, but he forced everybody to go into the army. And specifically against Talmidei Chachamim as well. And he stopped them from learning and teaching halachas. His legs were affected. Because halachas, right, we're seeing here a connection of regel and halacha. How do you walk? With your legs. Because what is halacha? Is the movement of the blood, of the damim. Because Asa, although he was a great king in many other regards, in this regard he prevented learning Torah from being possible and prevented halachas from being spread. Therefore, what happened? His legs were impacted. Okay, so let's recap a little bit. We said, what is the shashua olam haba? What is the delight of the world to come? That is Todah. That is giving thanks. What is connected to giving thanks? Halacha. You can't give thanks unless you have das, unless you have knowledge of God. Otherwise, how do you know what to give thanks for? So to give thanks, you need to have das. To have das, how do you accomplish das? Is through halacha, through understanding the practical way that Hashem tells us to live our life. So through knowing the practical way Hashem tells us to live our life, we are filled with Chachma and Das, and therefore we become closer to Hashem through the realm of consciousness, which is then Sha'ashua Olam Haba, which is Taida. Okay, and we'll continue next week on Friday.